Hi, I'm Troy Skatewood from Troy Skatewood and Partners. We're so happy that you joined us today.
And I'm Dan Shabowski with Troy Skatewood and Partners, and thanks so much for tuning in. Thank you guys so much for submitting your questions. We're really looking forward to diving into some of these answers here. So, Troy, if you want to get started with the first question.
Yep, I sure will. Does it add to the cost of selling to effectively stage the home for presentation?
And if they're talking about the commission portion, like it doesn't change our portion of that because it's already built into the service that we have.
Correct.
It's also about the investment too, where we're kind of making the upfront investment so it doesn't cost our people anything off the bat. And then obviously we're planning for them to have a higher gain return because of it. And I know you have some theories about the reason we do stage, because I used to never stage, and then I got to meet you and I was like, oh, what was I missing for all this time?
Right. So what we believe at Troy Skatewood and Partners is that if you stage, we're trying to set it so that like a buyer walks into your home and they just start mentally unpacking because they want to move in. So then the net gain for you at the end is going to be higher, because especially now we're creating a frenzy because a lot of people want to live there, and then kaboom, it blows up, and then what we've spent on staging and those costs involved, you're going to see the gain right out.
Yeah. And I was thinking about this the other day too. Like, think about when you go to new construction, you go to a D.R. Horton or, a new model home.
Right.
Does it have furniture in it?
Yep, it does.
Why do they spend all that money putting furniture in that if it doesn't have any benefit? So I think that obviously that's the case, because when you walk into those models, it feels like a home as opposed to just an empty box. They wouldn't go through all the time and the effort to put the furniture in those houses if it wasn't going to bring them more. Because think about it, they're selling stuff, they're trying to sell them for more money. So I think buyers are used to and they're conditioned to that. So when they have the same experience at your house, it also causes them to make the same decisions as well too. And it helps for those people that can't picture things.
Right.
Like if you can't picture, where everybody's different. Like some people like an empty house, but I think the majority of the people need to see things set out so that they understand spatially.
Well, and when you walk into an empty room or you walk into like new construction, I think is a perfect example. And you go through the model and you're in the owner's suite and you're like, wow, it's so huge. And then you walk into the same exact model that has no furniture and you're walking in and you're like, gosh, this room looks so much smaller.
Yeah.
So putting furniture in, setting the stage and setting the scene really, really helps. So that's what we tried to do with staging.
Yep.
The next question is from Brittany M. And she asked, my realtor says that she's a professional stager as well. What do you think about that? What do you think about that?
I don't know. The way we kind of operate is our areas of expertise. Like I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm not.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the staging and stuff, that's something I'm personally not good at, because this, like you were describing, it doesn't help me personally to see it. So I'm not the best person to do it. I'm good at what I'm good at. And some people are good at.
I'm dying here. I'm absolutely dying. Because I think you're good at one. What is that saying? You're good with the master of all trade and
jack of all,
master of none.
Yeah.
You're either a real estate agent or you're a stager. I mean, anybody can go and sit in a 60-hour class and say that they got their staging certificate. But if you have no sense of style, like, forget about it. Like, you're totally lost. Like, you can totally look online and look at different houses that have been, that are for sale. And then you get to one picture and all of a sudden it's like a single bed in an owner's suite, with a blanket draped over one way and a chair sitting over there. And it's like, what story is that telling me? Yeah. I'm not ready to open my checkbook and buy this house.
Yeah.
So you're truly trying to sell a dream, and a professional stager is going to do that. So we do use professional stagers. I'd like to think of myself as a great decorator because I think my home is beautiful. But you know what? When you're going to sell a house, a stager is going to come through my house and rip it apart and do her thing. So, and I'm totally down for that because I want to be able to get the maximum amount of money for my property when I sell.
And I think about the time that goes into that as well too. Like you think about the amount of time we spend just focusing on what we're good at in a day.
Absolutely.
When you start adding in the time that it takes to do it, you're going to skimp in one area. Like people that do that, I don't think they're bad people. I don't think that they're lazy, but there's only 24 hours a day. And if you don't leverage that great team by bringing in great stagers or photographers, you're going to get 50% of that person in both areas instead of 100% of one person, and then 100% of a different person that's all they do all day. I'm sure somebody who stages all day long is going to be better than somebody that stages for a couple hours and then tries to balance trying to negotiate or writing contracts or whatever else they're supposed to be doing. So I think having that expert's beneficial because of the hours in a day. There's only 24 hours, but if we can leverage multiple people's talents, you get a lot more out of those 24 hours too.
Absolutely. The next question is from Rachel Reeder. Why are there so many unexplained parts to the offer contract? If a person only purchases a home a few times in their lifetime, and there's time pressure to get the offer submitted, it seems like a liability not to explain, for example, the seller's responsibility for repairs, the seller versus the buyer responsibility, if the house appraises below proposed purchase amount. So there's quite a few questions there.
Yeah,
you want to take
I would
that one on?
kind of in a nutshell, I think what there's, and I get it. Like if you look at a Maryland purchase contract, it's 60 pages long,
right?
Written in legal jargon and by people that got paid to write it that way.
Right, it's 11 pages, but then by the time we put all the addendums in, it turns into 60 pages.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I get it. That's intimidating too. If you would have somebody just throw that in front of you and say, hey, sign these 60 pages real quick so you don't lose this house, you're going to feel pressured and feel like you're going to make a bad decision. I think it comes from the expectations ahead of time. It's all about the meeting in person first. Everybody gets excited. You want to go look at houses. That's awesome. Spend the hour and a half with your realtor first. And I know, like for us, a lot of times what we do is we'll prepare a sample contract and give it to our buyers, tell them to read it ahead of time, come back to us with questions. That way, when it does come time to write the offer, you already know what you're signing and you don't feel like you're going to be unprotected, because I think that they need to do a really good job of explaining it and paraphrasing, but at the same time, we don't want to interpret what it says. We want them to be able to read it, feel comfortable, and ask us questions about it.
Absolutely. And I think that with, and your real estate agent should take the time with you to do what we call a buyer counseling interview so that you can ask those questions, because there is a lot to it. There's a lot of moving parts when you're purchasing a home, and expectations from you, expectations of the seller, expectations of your lender, expectations of your realtor. And I know for one, I like to know everything that's in front of me. And I think a lot of people are that way. I know that I know someone who's very dear to me that he likes to know every single part that's coming forward, what's up for the weekend, exactly how it's going to go down. And so that there are people like that. And I'm not so much like that, but I know that people really like to have everything spilled out for them.
But I think having information allows you to make good decisions too, so you don't feel like you're ever making a rush decision. So spending the time up front will save you, because on the flip side of that, people that are then taking the time to read the contract when they found a house, you may right now lose out on it. And you don't want to feel like you have to pick one or the other, being informed or missing your opportunity. So if you just start ahead with that and then take the time to go through those things, people feel really confident because they understand it. And when I find that when clients or anybody or in any situation in my life or whatever, when I have all the information to make good decisions, I tend to make logical, good decisions, as opposed to emotional, uninformed decisions.
Absolutely.
That's going to cause me to revert later and then be afraid of what did I just do, because you get caught in the heat of the moment when you're excited.
Right. Exactly. Great.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Okay, so the next one is from Syad. Does Frederick have a first-time homebuyer incentive program such as the ones in Baltimore? Well, I don't know about Baltimore. Do you know about Baltimore?
I don't.
Okay, I don't know about Baltimore. So sorry, Syed, can't answer that question. But we do have a program in Frederick, but I know that they're out of money right now.
There are different programs that come in from time to time that are funded by the local area, and it just depends on where they're at in that cycle, whether they have the funds or they don't. So again, it's important if you are a first-time homebuyer and you're counting on those funds, that your realtor, or more importantly, probably your lender, knows if that program is funded and you have the ability to get that, because you don't want to plan on it and then not have the opportunity later.
Right.
So there's definitely not as many as there were back in 2009, 10, when they just said, please God, somebody buy a house.
Okay, so the next question is, what are some things to consider when getting into flipping houses? Wow.
Don't watch HGTV and then decide that sounds like a great idea. I can't wait to do that.
Right.
I think, in my personal opinion, and so that's actually interesting, that's what led me into real estate originally. Now, I worked on the construction side. I wasn't actually doing the flips myself. but I was doing the construction for flippers. What I learned is it is not something that you want to wing it on your first try. I would always recommend a partner that has experience because they know the things that you don't know yet. I've seen too many people have their first flip be their last flip if they're not prepared.
Right.
Or if their realtor is not prepared. I probably turn more people off of it than I do onto it when it comes to clients, because we get those calls all the time.
Yeah. Because they watch the shows or they hear something online like you can make X amount of dollars if you just do this. And so I usually am turning them away. It's like, nah, not the market to be doing that.
Yeah, and it's about the house as well too. Like I think sometimes flippers get very excited. So, what are some things to consider? Consider that you should probably look at 80 deals before you write a contract. Doesn't mean go to 80 houses. That means look at 80 to 100 deals, because that's how many it takes to find one that's a good deal. I think you have to have a formula as well too. I know the experienced flippers that I work with that are successful for long periods of time, they have a formula where they take the after repair value, the ARV, they multiply it down through their different formulas to know what they should purchase the house at. Also, underestimate the after repair value, overestimate the amount of cost that there's going to be. Too many times they go the opposite. They try to get more than they should and think it's going to cost less than it will. People don't also consider carrying costs in the middle. Even if you, like, let's say if you've read up and you've gone to the seminars, I've been to the seminars, and you leave there and you're rah, you're ready to go buy
ready
flips.
to buy a house.
Yeah. And they talk to you about hard money lending and all these different ways to do it. That's great. It's a way to fund a flip if you don't have the cash. But be aware that there's probably 11% interest on that. You're probably buying points up front, which means other fees. So when people are calculating their formulas, what they tend to do is forget about the carrying costs. While you own that house, you're paying property taxes, you're paying gas or heat or electric. You're also going to be paying points and things like that and interest if you borrowed that money. Factoring all those things in, and some people I know are jumping in independently first, but I would start with a team that involves a contractor, and I would definitely pick somebody who has done flips before. I would much rather do a few with a really experienced, knowledgeable partner rather than do it on my own to make all the money, because you're going to make a whole lot of nothing and put yourself in a really bad situation. Those people that are experienced investors, in a lot of cases, they're looking for property, and you can be the person who puts the sweat in, even if they're funding it, but they're there to help you with the pitfalls. So I would start with a good partner on your first many deals until you really figure out the game.
I agree.
Yep.
Okay. The next question that we have here is renting a smarter option for me right now in the seller's market? I would say no, just because right now money is very, it's at an all-time low. So I wouldn't think so. Yeah,
I mean, I definitely you want to weigh the payments of the two, because people think about renting as no money down. But in a lot of cases, you're coming with the first month's rent and a security deposit that's going to be a few $1,000s anyway. So depending on your loan situation, there may not be a huge difference.
Right.
But also calculating the monthly payment. Like, I know it's different per area too. Like in our area, in a lot of cases, people may spend, like for instance, like let's say you're going to rent a townhouse for $1,750 a month. That townhouse may be worth $260,000. Well, if you were to buy that same one, your mortgage is probably going to be $1,500 instead of $1,750 that you're going to pay in rent. And also when you leave, then you have something to leave with. And it's all, I mean, it is a comfort level. Obviously, you're in charge of that house more so than a rental. But the nice thing, you think about that, like say your rent was $2,000 a month. That's $24,000 a year with no return on it. To your point of the money being cheap, it is definitely a cheaper time regardless of sales price because interest rates are so low.
And a lot of people, I'm surprised when talking to buyers, a lot of people still think that they need 20% down. So, I mean, are you surprised, like when you get that call that people are like, yeah, I know I have to save 20% to be able to purchase a house, or I need 20% down to purchase a house.
Yeah. And I find, depending on the buyer's age as well too, because at the time that maybe their parents were buying a home, you did need 20% down. There weren't the creative lending programs that there are today, which with lower money down. Especially if you're a VA, if you're a veteran, or qualify for a program called USDA, you could have zero money down. And depending on what you can negotiate, even though it is a seller's market, I would just weigh the two. Don't worry about the sales price of the house. Worry more about your monthly payment. That's a great lender conversation to make this decision, because it's hard for us to say based on people's scenario, but your lender's going to tell you what that house is going to cost. Go then look at how much you pay to rent it, and then decide if it's a good trade-off for you. Because right now, most likely, your monthly payment will be lower than your rent. It's a commitment, though.
Yep,
obviously, to buy it.
But then you own the home, so it's a really great thing. Let's see. Can I sell my home and purchase one at the same time? What are my options? We get that question a lot because we have a lot of people that are trying to move up to their next home. So there are a few different things that you can do. Do you want to address those?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
So, I think there's three options. What I always tell people in this situation is there's going to be some sort of pain involved in any of the three scenarios.
Correct.
You pick the one that you're more comfortable with. The first scenario is you could sell your home first, or get it at least under contract before you go out and find a house. The downside to that one is you may be stuck with only what's on the market at that time, or you may need to go live somewhere on the interim if you don't want to be stuck with what's just out there. So that's one. The other one can be you can sell your house contingent on finding a house, which is a clause you can write in called a home of choice contingency, which if you want to kind of talk about what that means a little bit.
Yep. So home of choice contingency, what we usually do is write it for like 45 days. So that means that you get a buyer, and then the buyer signs an addendum that says that they understand that they will be able to purchase your home after you've had 45 days to identify a home that you want to purchase. And then once that's happened, then that contingency comes off and we proceed with the sale.
Yep. And again, you're stuck with kind of what's out there, but you don't have the risk of having to move twice at that point in time, which is the benefit. And the last one is you could go find your home first and then sell your house, which, the pain of that is people are always worried about overlapping mortgage payments or their qualifications, because not everybody's going to qualify to own both. Now, there are some creative ways you can use leases on your current house to bridge that gap, where you could look to rent your house in the short-term interim for a very short lease term, which causes you not to count the debt of your current house to allow you to qualify. People are worried about overlapping mortgage payments. I own two houses and I don't want to make two mortgage payments. So the good news is, in this great market, if you're able to do that, what it allows you to do is pick the house, and when you find the right one, you go to closing, you have a nice lapse in there. So for instance, right now it's February. If somebody were to close on their house in March, they don't have an April 1st payment. Their first mortgage payment is going to be May 1st. So in that time frame when you've moved, it gives you about a month and a half to put your house on the market, sell it, take the cash out. Now the fear there, people worry about, what if I need the cash to buy my new house, or at least I want the cash to put down on my new house? And do you want to talk to them a little bit about what recasting is?
Yes. So your mortgage lender can tell you more in depth about this, but what you can basically do is you purchase a home, and then all the proceeds that you're using from your existing home, or your old home, I guess you could say, is that you purchase the new home, and then all the proceeds you use to recast on the new loan.
Right. Yeah. So it's basically like you get to recalculate your payment.
Any closing costs.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Because normally if you just dump a big principal payment on there, your principal goes down, but your monthly payment doesn't.
Correct.
Recasting allows you to roll that over. And let's say I bought a house and I have a $300,000 mortgage, but I have $100 coming out of my house. Well, if I just normally dropped $100 on it, I'd be still paying on a $300,000 mortgage. It would just be done sooner. But in this case, what it does is it recalculates the payment to adjust for a $200,000 mortgage instead of paying on a $300,000 mortgage every month. So it's kind of the best of both worlds.
It is.
As good as the market is right now too, the nice thing is usually the house can get sold before you've got to deal with that overlapping mortgage payment, because you get that free month. People don't remember that free month. They get that month where they don't have a mortgage payment initially.
They're paying it.
Yeah. Well, because mortgage, and especially coming out of a lease too.
Right.
Mortgages are paid in arrears, which means the month after, where if you're paying a lease, you're pay up front. So you pay first,
Right.
So there's a gap in there as well too if you're transitioning from a lease to a purchase.
Right.
And you don't have to be homeless in between, which is the scary thing for a lot of people. And
A lot, yes, especially, yes, absolutely.
so it just depends what you're comfortable with, those three options. Like there's something painful or scary in all three of them. It's just whatever your comfort level is. Like, I don't know, for your experience, like for me, we sold our house and we went and rented for a year while we found what we wanted in between, because we were willing to move twice. Now we moved twice and it stunk. And
Right.
in hindsight.
Yeah.
You know?
And wait, your wife had a baby.
And we had a baby.
Yeah, you had a baby right when you moved to your rental, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and then I think we had another one when we moved to the... I think she just
Don't
doesn't like to
anymore.
move and uses that as good excuses each time. So she's just smarter than me. I think that's it. Also allowed me to get rid of a lot of crap and not take it to our new house. So how did you do when you moved in your
We
past movements?
sold first, rented, and then purchased.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that takes away that fear of being stuck with whatever's out there that day, and you don't just have to pick what's
Right.
out there. So
Right.
that's always a tough one, to make your house contingent on doing that, because you're just stuck with the inventory, which right now is what that's a fear that's holding a lot of people back. Because what does everybody say? Well, I would move. I'd love to sell my house. I just don't know where I want to go next.
So I think it's been really great for the people who are downsizing, that are able to have recognized that they don't have to live in the area because they're teleworking.
Yeah.
And so they can move further out or move to a different area. So I think it's been really good in that respect.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's an interesting, I know this isn't really the question, but it's kind of a solution to that problem where people do run into that a lot. You know, right now, there was actually an interesting statistic came out that actually more homes are selling each month than are for sale, which means that there's a lot of off-market transactions happening. And you can be very proactive to find homes before they come on the market, because a lot of people are willing to sell if you can bring them a buyer. And in this case, a lot of times that can happen. We've done a lot here recently where we find homes that aren't on the market, which usually allow for more flexible time frames to sell your house. So it allows you to find the house you want first, and we can target them based on neighborhoods or criteria. And then you don't have to deal with that scary thing of dealing with whatever's on the market at that time.
Right. Right. Exactly. Okay. Let's see. What else do we have? The next question is from Kate Lynch. What do you recommend to be done to get a house ready to be sold? Paint? Question mark. New flooring? No appliances? So I think it depends on the house. I know that when we go on appointments, we will take a walkthrough and let you know what in our recommendation, what we see. A lot of buyers today are wanting to purchase a home that has everything done, and you'll get top dollar for it as well.
Yeah.
A lot of people are, they're putting max down that they can, and they don't have the time or the wherewithal to be able to make those simple repairs. Plus, I think we've definitely seen the return on investment, that your house will sell quicker, sell faster for a higher price if you go ahead and take care of those minor detailing, such as floor, carpeting, and paint.
Yeah, and it's about you said a good word in there too, return on investment. I think as we determine what we do, that's why it's important to have these meetings earlier. I feel bad a lot of times when we talk to a seller, it's like, oh, I've been preparing my house for the last 6 months, and they may be spending money in areas that don't necessarily bring in return.
Right.
Or they're spending more money on certain things that aren't going to come back to them.
Correct.
So I think it's important to really focus, like that piece that you said, like, for instance, if you're upgrading your countertops from Formica to granite, that's something that will come back to you. You will see that benefit in an appraisal, in a buyer's eyes. And because there's two kinds of costs, I think. There's actual costs, and then there's perceived costs. Like if I were to ask everybody, what do you think a countertop costs? You're going to hear $5,000, $10,000. But if it only costs you $2 and it can return you $10, it's a worthwhile investment. If something's not going to return you that, then it's not always a good idea to do. So, you made the point about people having the time or the money too, because now obviously with COVID, it's a little different when people are home, but a lot of people in our area specifically are commuting. If you have a 45 minute to an hour commute every day, both ways,
yes,
the last thing you want to come home to do is to paint that wall. Because people always, as you meet with them, well, it's just paint. It is just paint, but people are willing to pay for the convenience in a lot of cases to not have to paint. They probably are still going to paint. The difference is, do you have to paint? Or do you feel like you have to? And to them, it's like, well, I don't have the time to do it, even if I can do it. Or like you said, they put the money down that they have. They don't have the cost for the extra renovations over time.
And the other thing that we've seen is that, when you take some buyers out, they're like looking at a project and are like, oh yeah, so I need to paint that room. And you're calculating, okay, well, if you buy a really nice paint, that's going to be $84 a gallon, but then you can get this kind of paint that'll only cost you $24. So you're calculating, okay, how much is it going to cost to paint the room? Next thing out of their mouth, $4,000 because I got to paint. So as a seller, like all of a sudden you just lost $4,000 because of perception, exactly what you said. So you're going to get more if you just go ahead and just take care of the repairs. Yeah. But so do call us, and we'll let you know which items that you should take care of and how you should prepare your house to sell.
Yeah.
So
people are worried about making specific choices too, because they always
paralyzed.
Tell you, what if I put it in and they don't like it? Mm-hmm. And that's why we model it off of successful things to neutralize the house as well too.
Right.
Because when you come in to a house, you're trying to see yourself in it, and if you can neutralize the walls and things like that, people are going to think about how does it fit them and their families and their situation, as opposed to getting stuck. And I always tell people I always call it the spider story. So this is how I relate the paint color thing or things like that. Like when I was a kid, my dad got a job in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, which is pretty rural. And all the houses were in the woods. And we went to look at a house one day, and this is, I don't think an exaggeration because I was 13, but there was a spider the size of my hand today on the chimney on the outside of that house. And when we got in the car and left that day, and it was alive, it wasn't a Halloween decoration. When we left, what do you think we called that house?
The spider house.
It was the spider house.
Right.
You don't want to be the neon green house.
Right.
When they get in the car or when they look at it online, you don't want to be the neon green house because they're worried about your paint color and not how nice your neighborhood is or how nice you've done the landscaping outside. Because that's an arbitrary thing. Like it wasn't even a piece of the house. I'm sure they existed everywhere, but I didn't have to know. But that was just the perception we left in our head. And the difference is now people are making their decisions from their computer chairs, not in the house.
Correct. That's the other thing about importance of staging, the importance of marketing correctly and pictures and everything that we do to market and sell a home.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, okay, let's see. What is a proper timeline to prepare my home to sell? What is a proper timeline to prepare my home to sell? Wow. Proper timeline. How long is it going to take?
Yeah.
I guess is the question. I think it just depends on what you have to do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's everyone, every case is different. Every person is different. The best thing to do is just give us a call, and we'll come and we'll tour your property and we'll go through a timeline with you. Like give you, like if you need more, some people need more hand holding than others. And we'll design that schedule for you to, like, if you're not the neatest person and you have a lot to go through, then we'll give you a timeline to make sure that you get through certain rooms and certain areas. And then and if you are that really super wicked neat organized person and your house is ready to go, we'll still give you a timeline of like what everything is going to look like. And from the day that we set our target list date, and then we work backwards from there. Mm-hmm. So every case is different.
Yeah, and I think it's great to have that meeting sooner than later, even if it's 6 months away or it's next year. It's always more time than you think. And I always feel bad when people come in a situation where they have to do it in 2 weeks.
Right.
Because when you lay it out, it doesn't sound like it's that bad. But again, it comes back to you don't realize how much stuff you have. Even if you live, and I know, like when we were selling our house, I should have known better. Like it was a longer process to get my house ready than I thought it was, and just keeping it in that showing condition every day was hard. So I'm really glad we did the prep work we did ahead of time, but we started 6 months and went room by room. And when that room was done, we put a piece of blue tape on it, and we didn't go touch that room in the meantime as we were finishing. It made life a lot easier, where if you have to cram it into 2 weeks, you're either going to stop or you're really going to hate everybody in your life. And for those 2 weeks, it can be done. It's just much more painful. So if you can afford to have that 6 months time frame, it gives you more time to do it at your own pace. And then you don't miss out on opportunities. You don't get divorced because you want to. But I think it just makes your life a lot easier to have. And plus then you have that person to bounce ideas off on for 6 months, as opposed to like trying to rush right at the end.
Right, exactly. But we've been able to do those people and get them ready, like, within a couple weeks. So it is possible. You don't have to wait the 6 months. If you have the time, then it works. But it is a seller's market right now. It used to be that when I first started selling houses, spring market was when the grass was green and the flowers were coming in and the leaves were coming in on the trees. That was a spring market. And what I tell everyone now, it's like the spring market is really February, because like with any holiday that we've had, you know how you go and you're trying to buy July 4th fireworks and you go to the store and then you go and there's Halloween decorations. It's the same thing with real estate. Everything has been moved up. So now it's February, so we're in the spring market. So thank you so much for tuning in. We hope that we are able to do this again soon.
And we may have even generated some more questions, or you need some more in-depth answers to any of these things specifically. If you'd like to send us a message, please go to troycegatewood.com and send us your inquiries. We'd be happy to answer them.